All right, call the meeting order.
The meeting has been posted according to open meeting laws.
Roll call.
President Johnson.
Here.
Trustee Alexander.
Here.
Trustee Holm.
Here.
Trustee Nugent. Here. Trustee Renucci.
Here.
And Trustee Smalley.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, we'll start with citizen participation. Per Village Resolution 2017-01, anyone wishing to address the village board during citizen participation will be allowed 5 minutes. Your subject must specifically relate to matters under the jurisdiction of the village board, whether on the agenda or not. The village board should not engage in a discussion regarding comments because it was not part of the publicly noticed agenda. Upon conclusion of this citizen participation segment, members of the audience are not allowed further comment unless they're participating in a public hearing or specifically allowed by a majority vote of the village board due to involvement in an agenda item. That said, anybody? Come on up. State your name and address, please.
Marty Zest, representing 2838 Main Street. I see you have on your agenda tonight for school board or school street improvements, approve the repair or restructure of it. And you guys had an informal meeting or formal meeting in December with the neighbors here. And I was here, asked a couple questions, but I haven't got any answers for those questions since then. The payment schedule for 2838 Main Street also. Has anybody looked at it? I mean, they were all concerned about traffic on that road. And I had called Matt later and said, could there possibly put a cul-de-sac in on that road instead than a through street? I mean, it's just an idea to look at different ideas on that. It doesn't go anywhere, and it's already a dangerous intersection, and now you're going to put 120 apartments across from School Street. I mean, I was just wondering if they looked into that or ran it through the engineers to see if it could possibly be done that way. But just looking for answers.
Yep, no, thanks, Marty. And I think some of what Jason and Tim's report later will try to address that. So I think we've got that. Thank you.
And just to touch on the assessment stuff, engineering will be doing an assessment report, and then we will find out property by property what charges will be.
Yeah, so let's take it when we get to that agenda item, okay? Anybody else for citizen participation? Going once? Going twice? All right, I will close citizen participation. Move on to consent agenda. One motion and a second. We'll approve all the following items. Any item may be pulled from the list and voted on separately.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
Any discussions or question? Go ahead.
I looked at the paperwork that I got from the MDC, East Troy LLC. It was just, they had to adjust the lot lines on this? Was that it?
It was actually the easement to access their stormwater retention area. So they had enlarged the stormwater retention area, therefore the easement area that was covered in the CSM needed to be enlarged as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, on to item one, miscellaneous business. I cannot speak this evening. Item one, recommendation from the Plan Commission to approve exterior renovation and expansion of the existing building located at 2114-2116 Church Street in Downtown Design District with conditions. CB District, Roger Trader applicant, application 2023-40. And this was at the Plan Commission this previous week. You'll see the memo here from Eileen, and also Roger's here in case there's any questions for him.
Was there any update on the awning situation?
That was, the Plan Commission determined not to change the code, and so that the plan needed to be adjusted.
Nope, understood that, but is there any further consideration of if there's going to be an awning and how that's going to look?
Nick DePietro, the architect, submitted two alternatives that he felt were going to meet code. And if I'm not mistaken, the staff, Plan Commission authorized the staff to look at it and improve the changes from last week's meeting, correct? So they've been addressed. There will be an awning of sorts, yes, and we're going to be code compliant.
Good to hear.
Okay?
Yeah, so part of the discussion was under the original proposal of kind of that metal awning, there was lighting as a part with underneath that, and that's no longer the case here, so you can see the two additional down lights there. And then it looks like Nick addressed the questions from Tim about signage area.
Correct. I haven't received word from Tim on reviewing this yet, so I would recommend that it just be approved, providing the zoning administrator reviews it and it's acceptable. I don't know why we're getting feedback when those are both on now. I got to look into that. But Jason, did you happen to look at the sidewalk? Were there any concerns about the amount of encroachment on the sidewalk?
So I did go up there today and actually measured the walk. It's a 5-foot walk there, and actually it's like 5'2". So as long as it's constructed per plan, I think that encroached the sidewalk by 6 inches, if I'm not mistaken. That's what the plan showed, but we should be okay.
Can I ask a question, Jason? You said the encroachment is from the building or the awning?
So there's a concrete stoop in front of the building, which is what they're proposing to build a planter and kind of bench over. And what they're saying is that that will protrude 6 inches into the sidewalk from the front of that stoop, correct, Roger? That's what we're showing, and yeah.
No, I have no problem with it. I just wanted to make sure I was clear on what was being talked about.
The plans look amazing, so thank you.
They sure do.
Other questions? So I think if we're going to have a motion, it ought to be contingent upon Tim's approval.
So I'll make a motion to approve the revised plans contingent upon the property owner recording an encroachment agreement with the neighboring property to the south, approval by Tim, planner, and clarification whether the county will require an encroachment agreement and review of the planter.
Yeah, so it's the
Oh,
county's
because it's the
sidewalk.
planter, yeah. Yeah, okay. Review the planter encroachment.
Sorry, I get that back. It's their right of way, it's our sidewalks. Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay. Other questions or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. On to item 2, consider request for carryover of 2023 capital improvement funds for parks and recreation projects. You see the memo here from Vicki and her request. Any questions for Jason?
I just wanted to add, usually we take care of these type of carryovers when the board
Is just enhance the unfinished area that we always refer to. There's more and more classes going on there, so we just want to make it a little bit nicer. We want to expand it, remove some of those offices from the former Trent Tube facility, and just make that area bigger, get some natural light in there, and again, just make it nicer.
What's the enhancements to the diamond?
So that's actually center field, which is the older field. So we have the 3 back at Mitchell Park, and then there's a hardball field, the field in the middle. It's become overgrown with weeds, and we want to do a deep dive into it, pull all those weeds out, and freshen it up, make it a better facility.
Well, I'll move to approve a carryover of $25,000 for updates to the rec area and center field baseball softball diamond.
I'll second it.
Any questions or discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 3, consider approval of Phase 3 of street LED conversion. And I was happy to see we got a map this time, which was very nice. What's their, I guess, when are they thinking of starting and completing?
I won't know that till we probably won't know that till they start working. She had emailed me last fall to see if we were planning on it, and I said, yes, we are. It's got to go through the budgeting process, but I would think that they will be starting this in the next couple of months. You'll notice that there's significantly less fixtures being replaced in this phase, because this is all the non-standard lighting. All the ones in the wooden poles have essentially been done already. This is all the stuff that's non-typical.
How many more phases do we have?
This is it. This is the final phase. Anything being installed now is, of course, the new LED technology.
I just hope they don't turn purple like I saw in some.
That's the DOT. I'm not sure why. I'm sure there's a reason behind that, but I don't know what it is.
It's a manufacturing defect in some of the LED diodes. Yeah, they turn purple.
Oh, I thought that was a feature. I kind of like the way that looks.
Maybe for Mardi Gras, but the rest of the year, not so much.
Well, I'll make a motion that we approve Phase 3 of the LED streetlight upgrade project.
And I'll second that motion.
All right, any other questions or discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 4, consider award of School Street reconstruction bid. So Tim, Jason, do you want to kind of walk us through this and then maybe try to address some of Marty's questions from earlier?
Sure. So as far as the bids, we did receive 4 bids from qualified contractors. Low bid is asphalt contractors who we're recommending the award go to. If you look at kind of the bottom line of the bids, though, with some very, very tight bids, I think the first and second bids were about $10,000 apart, which is indicative of some very competitive and good bids to receive. As far as the assessments, we are working that assessment report right now and expect probably in the next 30 to 60 days to be ready to bring that forward to the board for consideration and the first of those assessment meetings. And then as far as the intersection goes, we did take a look at that and looked at how to make that operate safely if we were to do anything with that intersection. And just really with the amount of elevation differences there and other things we looked at, just really think the current configuration is probably the safest transportation facility to have right there.
And the big challenge as well, because we did look at the cul-de-sac, is we just don't have the real estate there. That was the challenge with that.
Yeah, cul-de-sacs, there's the big bulb there that just would not have fit, and then you've got a lot of elevation difference as well.
So you will notice in the water utility budget, we're a little short. However, we did, this is a project that we borrowed for. And so this one in the Highway 20 project, and we do have excess funds that we borrowed. We still have about $143,000 that can be utilized for the water utility projects. So that would cover the shortfall here and what we're going to talk about later with Highway 20.
Well, yeah, that was going to be my next question when you mentioned 20, because we're still going to have some water involved on the next phase, are we not?
Nope, we completed all that in the first phase of that.
Okay, but what about anything crossing under 20? That's just sewer?
No, there's sewer and water,
Okay.
but we're not doing anything with that. It's
We don't have to-
newer
we don't have-
utility.
You don't have to put any protection pipes, anything in, or?
No.
Okay.
So this actually, what we're going to talk about later, does finish up our portion of Highway 20.
I guess back to School Street. What's our timeline again on this project? I know start is always weather dependent, but once we start, about when and how long?
Jason, do you recall, I think we gave them a 3-month window, but
A substantial completion by, I think, early October.
yeah, that's right.
And yes, we gave them 90 days. They can start whenever, but they have 90 days from when they start to finish it up. Has to be done by early October.
So I guess when do we think we'll be, I mean, I know you've got to go through the assessment report and that you were talking about, but when do we think we'll be giving notice to the residents as to when we're actually going to come in and tear it up?
So, provided we award the bids, we'll be starting the contracts and looking to schedule a pre-construction meeting. Typically, it's at least 30 days, which sets us into in kind of a early spring if they're ready to go. And that'll have to be some conversations we'll have with the contractor to see, okay, what truly is your schedule? When do you want to get going on this?
And then from there, we can schedule a public information meeting as well. And then, of course, there'll be a public hearing for the assessments as well.
Marty, to answer your questions?
I've got a question in regards to the driveway approaches and or aprons. I didn't see any mention here, maybe I missed it, and I apologize. But their aprons and approaches are also going to be included in all this, correct?
Correct.
Did we answer your questions from?
That's something we will determine in the assessment report.
So I think this is the clarification, though, we need about based upon, because it's not, is it a corner lot, because of our ordinance. So I think we need to evaluate that in our assessment report. I think that's what you're getting at. Your mom's property, right? Well, the address is Main Street. I understand, but yeah, we talked about this in the last, that because it's a triangular, the address is Main Street, is it considered a corner lot, and how does that assessment ordinance work?
Yeah, we'll be taking a look at that and working with staff.
Because, I mean, realistically, the lot is triangular, but it fronts two streets just like a corner lot would.
So we'll have to look at it in the ordinance, so.
Well, and the other question was, sewer water tap, put it in now or tear up the road?
I think to our conversation, you're going to have to talk with your mom about, because she's the property owner. I know, we can't do much on that, on your word, sorry.
If you want to further discuss the email I sent you, give me a call, stop in, whatever. I get your concern, but there's just a process.
Okay, any other questions for Tim, Jason? Going once, going twice, okay.
I'll make a motion to recommend awarding the bid to asphalt contractors for $674,814.80.
I'll second it.
Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, on to item 5, provide direction on DNR stewardship grant. And I think this is going to require a little bit of discussion, and you're going to have to walk us through this, Tim, because Jason tried to explain it to me on Friday, and he goes, Tim will walk us through it, so.
That's called the hot seat. So it's a little bit confusing. So we have two grants for the same area. One's the DOT TAP grant, of which we're going out and soliciting engineering proposals right now to bring that through the DOT process, to put the multi-use trail in from Mill Pond Park out to the lofts and right in that area. The second grant we were given, or awarded, I should say, is the DNR stewardship grant. If you remember about, it's a little bit, probably over a year ago now, we said, hey, let's go after both and see what happens. Maybe one comes in, maybe one doesn't, and lo and behold, both came in. So it's a good problem. And we talked with the DNR stewardship people, and they said as part of this, you have some flexibility as to how you use those funds. And up to and including doing some work adjacently, we've got the Mill Pond paving project, as far as the parking lot there for the Mill Pond we were talking about already doing. I think it was already in the budget for this year, or being considered for it. In addition to some additional either trails along the stream or some other trailhead. All of these items are fundable within that DNR stewardship grant. So, very nice thing to be able to basically expand trails or amenities in the area. Now, it's a 50-50 grant. The DNR awarded us a grant of $458,000 at a 50-50 match. So that's $450,000 or $460,000 of DNR funds paired with 50% of village funds for a $900,000 project or so. That went to Joint Finance Committee because anything over $249,999 requires joint finance approval.
Joint finance from whom?
Joint finance of the state, the Joint Finance Committee for the state legislature.
The state legislature, not the DNR.
Correct.
Okay.
So DNR said, hey, yeah, let's give them the money. So that goes to joint finance for approval because it's over the $249,999. And it goes through basically a 14-day waiting period at joint finance. Kind of, I consider it similar to your consent agenda. If nobody objects, it passes and goes right through. This 14-day period, one member, we don't know who or why, objected, which then requires it to go to a hearing for approval or denial or amending. In this cation, or when we're talking with Sarah DeBryan, the DNR representative, they have at times never scheduled the hearings. So sometimes hey, it's out there, it sits out there for 2 years. They may or may not schedule a hearing. We don't know. DNR has taken the stance now that they'll give it a few months, and if no hearings assigned, they'll give you one last chance to withdraw from joint finance, or they'll give the money someplace else because they have to encumber the funds. They can't just let it sit out there. Jason and I talked about through the options. So at the end of the day, we have three options. One, wait for the Joint Finance Committee, which will, two options really. Wait for the Joint Finance Committee to see if they schedule a hearing. They may or may not schedule a hearing. If they do schedule a hearing, they may approve the funds up to $458. They may amend the amount to some lesser amount. Or third option is they may say, yeah, we don't want to give East Troy the money. We're not going to fund this at all. Those are the three things the Joint Finance Committee, if they schedule a hearing, could do. The other option is the village can choose to withdraw the application from Joint Finance and accept a DNR grant of $249,999, and the money is essentially encumbered. They withdraw it from Joint Finance, and they award up to the $249,999.
And then we have to spend $249,999.
Matching.
Obviously, to match.
To matching. Jason and I talked about it, talked with the DNR representative. Our recommendation is to act to withdraw the application from Joint Finance, take the bird in hand, which is still a pretty good sized project, and proceed that way. Now, a couple of things. You don't have to spend that full amount. So if you said, hey, let's do a $200,000 project, then you spend $100 at a village and you get a 50% match, or you can, there's real flexibility there still, but it allows you to not completely miss out on the funds.
Tim, talk a little bit about what we can, so in other words, what the initial scope we applied for was and what we could potentially use the 250 for.
Yeah, so we initially applied for bringing the trail out to the lofts, but we already have a 80-20 grant for that through the state. There is an option to be able to use some of this money for funding the village portion. So of that grant to bring the money out there, you can grab some of this money and use it to pay a portion of the village's funds for that DOT grant. Or you can do other trail-like items in the area. So trail-like items would be a trailhead at Mill Pond Park, kind of getting ready for that future trail that may or may not go out to McGuanago, or along the creek out to Town Line Road. So you can do a trailhead there. You can use the funds to redo the parking lot for Mill Pond Park, which is a park-like amenity. You can build a trail along the new stream we just are reclaiming, including doing pedestrian bridges and other things like that along that area. So there's some real good flexibility as to where those funds go. The issue is if you don't pull back from joint finance, you may lose that option.
It is interesting in the letter, it does say that a hearing will be scheduled, but we also, from the meeting we sat in on, that's not a guarantee. So, and I personally believe, this is my opinion, but I believe we were not selected because we received the DOT TAP grant for this project. That was the only question we ever were asked through the whole process, was relating to that TAP grant, with that $1 million plus grant that we did receive. So I suspect that's why we weren't selected.
And maybe it was just a member saying they wanted some more information about how the funds were going to be used, but
I always thought we had to do pretty much an open meeting and open, but I guess my question is, are these elected officials on this board, or are these appointed people?
It's legislators. Assembly and Senate. It's joint finance.
I'm sorry? So they're elected officials?
Tim, did you ever hear anything back?
no, I reached out to Representative Voss, but did not hear back, to see if he got any background. He's not on the committee, but I was just reaching out to see if he had anything.
So, setting aside for just a second the decision, let's just say that we, agree to your recommendation, which I appreciate the walkthrough of the complex situation. When would we be in a position to just kind of have a discussion then of what is the project? Because we have to build the trail to the lofts, and I'd like to see what we think those numbers are going to come in at for 80/20, and then we have this, and then how much is Mill Pond and Park paving that, and I can't remember if we had that budgeted, and just kind of. ARPA funds, yeah. So just how do the puzzle pieces all fit together to be like, this is what it's going to look like?
So we have to design, we have to select a design consultant by May 1, right?
I believe it to be in their contract by then.
Okay. So we'll be designing the Phase 2 trail for the large grant in, later this year. But as far as how that would relate to, so the other thing I just want to point out is we did budget some money this year, I think I'm using round numbers here, 90 grand to build that parking lot at Mill Pond Park. And my thought would be, okay, let's hold off on that. We could use those funds to help match, this grant, and then we could construct that parking lot with this funds, and then potentially maybe a trail, we start a trail out towards the creek.
Yeah.
Just shooting from the hip with it, but I would think, to answer your question,
Yeah.
4 months, maybe we could come back with something.
Yeah, I would think so if we're going to be, at least you're going to have a consultant for the DOT project here. You'll know your consultant in about 2 weeks. But they'll go through contracting but that's really just for the design costs at that point. You're not going to really know your full-in costs by that point, but I can tell you, when we put that application together, we put some pretty heavy inflation numbers into our budgets to try to protect the village and make sure that we weren't short on those numbers. So those are pretty hefty numbers that we put in there for design and construction of that. As far as what to do with the DNR stewardship, I think we could bring some concepts forward, but I think it's going to have to be some discussion, some real input from what the board and maybe also the community wants to see there.
Yeah, so that's where I was going to go next. I feel like this ought to come from Park and Rec. What do you think, John? So I think if you could coordinate with Vicki, and I'd like to get input. I mean, obviously we want the trail, and kind of like you and I talked about on Friday, that's the minimum to go from Mill Pond down to the lofts. Got to do that. now we have this as an option, so what else are we going to do? And how are we moving other budgets around and whatnot, and what are we going to try to do? And I'm assuming we don't have to do all of this year, right? We have another year to do it.
Correct. With DNR, we have, what, 2 years?
I believe so.
Don't we have to use those ARPA funds by the end of the year?
They have to be encumbered or designated by the end of the year.
Yep, we just haven't have them committed by the end of the year.
But if you commit them, you're really locked into it. You can't, about the only way you're going to get out of it is like, oh, I was going to give it to this company, and then they went bankrupt or something like that.
Yeah, I'm just thinking if we're not, yet with the timing of everything, if we're not using them for the parking lot and we want to do a trailhead with them or something like that, and all of a sudden this gets pushed out, now all of a sudden we're going to lose these funds because we haven't committed them?
You can commit them to the building project.
So they can just be committed in a general sense?
Yeah, I mean, we have an active project going on. We could redesignate that commitment to the building project and use it that way.
Perfect.
The other thing is DNR stewardship grants has it's more flexible on timing than the DOT project where it's more of a long process. It's more of like a municipal project where you can get in, design it. Obviously, there's a lot of public involvement here, but it's a lot easier to get through a project with that than it is going through a project through the DOT process.
I guess just to build on the point you brought up, Jason, I would like to know from the board tonight some direction about that parking lot, because if I was to move on that parking lot in '24, I would need to be doing that soon. In my mind, it makes sense to hang on to that money to utilize it as a matching fund towards, the grant. So I just want to make sure that the board isn't interested in getting that parking lot constructed this year, because if you are, I would need to move on that soon.
Do we have any ADA issues without having it blacktopped or paved or anything like that?
Well, we're not ADA compliant currently, but we don't have a parking lot. I mean, obviously, when we do a parking lot, we'll design some ADA stuff into that. But what I'm saying is that won't happen this year if we want to, try to utilize the grant to construct the parking lot and the trailhead. We'll likely get it designed this year, but we won't construct.
I guess I'm looking for you guys in Park and Rec to tell us how to assemble the Lego pieces and what does that mean from a timeline standpoint. So I don't want to tell you, yes, you must do this, if that's not your recommendation. I mean, I think we all want that parking lot paved, and I think the board agrees with that, and that's why we budgeted the way we did. But at the same time, this is a different situation. So how do we maximize the value for the village and the citizens?
Can I ask a question here in regards to that? Is there, in my mind, I'm thinking, is there any way or any grants that we have that we might be in jeopardy of losing if we don't utilize it? Then maybe you'd want to put that towards that parking lot then, or, you know what I'm saying? You have something that's been already figured out, set in stone, or asphalt if you'd rather, but we know we want the lot done, but I'm seeing what you're saying about putting it towards something else. But if there's a grant that we may end up losing, maybe we'd be better off putting it towards that project.
We don't have anything in jeopardy. I mean, the ARPA funds, I think we already kind of identified a workaround for that, so I don't think there's anything in jeopardy here. To Matt's point, we just want to make sure we're spending it, the most efficient way.
Can we poll the community as well, Facebook or something like that, to see maybe there's some suggestions that they have?
Yeah, I mean, we could, maybe ask Chelsea if she could, put something. But again, I would almost kind of encourage them to come to a Park and Rec meeting, the March Park and Rec meeting. I know that's next month. So I know you're talking about trying to get that parking lot done, if you wanted it done this year. I don't know what you might want to put together for Park and Rec between now and March, but maybe just go over that with them.
Was it your Jason, was it your plan that when they were going to do School Street, they were going to pave that lot then?
No, we talked about that, but we decided not to include that with School Street, so.
So it sounds like we've got some, how do we want to structure this decisions to address in March? But we do have this question in front of us now about what do we do for, based upon the memo from Tim?
I think we take bird in hand.
Is that a motion?
Do we need a motion on this?
Because we would be taking an action to withdraw, so we need a motion.
Sorry, I make a motion to not accept the JFC proposal or grant. Does that work?
No.
Let me try again. Is that the one I want? Withdraw from the DNR stewardship grant. Wait a minute. Now you got me confused. I thought I was straight.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to withdraw the request from the JFC and accept a reduced grant award in the amount of $249,999. Does that work? Yes. Okay. Eventually it was going to get out.
I'll second it.
We got to a motion and to a second. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Are you still up? Oh. You are in the hot seat tonight. All right, item 6, consider Highway 20 project closeout. And this is, I'm assuming, the portion that was in last year?
Correct. This is all the utility stuff, the water main, and we did a little bit of sanitary, from the 2023 project, engineering and construction. Again, we have nothing slated to pay for in the DOT 2024 project,
Or 25?
or 25.
What about 26?
We did not want to pursue any sidewalks, so I don't think, unless there's some sanitary manholes or something we need to capture, that's all newer water main, so there won't be anything throughout that corridor that I see right now that's a big project.
Jason, I have a question on the update we got. The first line up there we had, I know you told me you had a problem with some of the valves that they procured were not made in America.
That's correct, and those
And-
were replaced.
Right, and I guess, was that on our pocket?
No, there was obviously some extra time for Tim's team involved with that, but they're also the ones who caught it. And no, we did not pay for any removals, any replacements.
It was the company that got the valves.
Correct.
Okay.
It was between the supplier and the contractor.
Yeah, we all learned something on that. The valve that we've specified forever, it's always been made in the U.S. Apparently, they started outsourcing some of their manufacturing to China. And some of the material that came over, what didn't look the same, but had the was it Mueller?
Yes.
Had the Mueller stamp on it, but was not U.S. made.
It also had a made in China sticker on it, so. And you'll be seeing an update in our standard specifications because of this as well in a future meeting.
Just on a side note to that, when you review your standard specifications, especially, because we've been doing security cameras, electronics, and things like that, that cannot be sourced out of China either.
I also had a question on the second page, if we can, from Lynch, on the sanitary lining and water main extension. On Phase 106 and 107, both explanation lines said the scope of Lynch provide a survey of the east connection to review water main cover over existing main. But then down below it in 107, it says the exact same thing.
That appears to be a typo.
I appreciate that. I just didn't want to pay twice.
Yeah. No, the alignment updates. So during construction, we had a lot of existing utility challenges, and the contractor was under the gun because of the time of year And so we did a lot of realigning of sanitary, of the water main to keep them on schedule, but also avoid putting water main underneath the pavement, which would be a future cost for the village. So there was a lot of give and take and a lot of work involved with that during construction.
There was also quite a large area of contamination that was discovered during excavation early on in the project when they were excavating for the gas main. So that resulted in a change for us. DNR required a different pipe material in that area. We couldn't use the plastic. We had to go to a ductile.
And we never did figure out where that came from, did we?
My understanding is it was called blade oil, and it was an oil that was used back in the day to keep dust down on that whole, before it was paved. But there was a substantial amount of it in the area of the railroad tracks, yes.
Learn something new every day. All right, any other, do we need a motion on this, or are we're to accept a closeout? What do we need?
We have, as part of the closeout, we do have an amendment so that we can close our contract out as well.
That's the 29,432?
I just also, again, you needed to take a look at these change orders before we can close out, make the final payment. Per our procurement policy, you need to see all change orders before we make the final payment, so.
Do we hold off then on making a motion until we see those change orders?
They're in front of you in the memo. It's not an official change order like you're used to seeing because this is a DOT project. DOT
That's-
does
that's
things a
why I
little
was
different.
asking.
So that's why it looks a little different.
Yeah, and it's an amendment, and then closing it out.
I'll make a motion to approve the amendment in the amount of $29,432.60 and close out the Highway 20 project.
I'll second that.
Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Motion to approve the updated village procurement policy as presented.
I'll second.
Also, I saw something from the league today about there is a bill in the legislature about adjusting some other procurement stuff due to inflation. So I was happy to see that we're addressing that as well. So good job. All right, any other questions or comments, discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 8, consider a letter of intent for fiber build with Evergent. We discussed this, I think, at the last meeting. And I guess for the public's benefit, we are discussing with Evergent about the possibility of them coming into the village and starting to build out a fiber network that would include service to residential, businesses, the village, to improve our internet infrastructure here. I know many people work remote. I work remote, and it's good to have competition in place, and we need it.
And from what I understood, Matt, it's because some of the other companies that would have available showed little or no interest in doing that.
Some seem to say they will, and they haven't. They may choose to, and Spectrum/Charter may choose to do what they want to do. All this is pursuing who we would be. We're working on a letter of intent. There will be additional probably agreements, but there are what are called BEAD grants. So the federal government issued, I think, was this part of the bipartisan infrastructure? One of those large improvement bills. They gave all the money to the states, and they said, you figure out how people are going to apply for the grants, kind of like DOT does. So we are we would, if we go forward with eVergent and we apply for BEAD grants on their behalf, that's what this is basically saying, that's what our intention is. And, our neighboring municipalities, I know Town of Troy did something similar with not eVergent, a different provider, but they were working on BEAD grants and worked with the county on that, so.
Do you need a motion then to approve this?
We do.
All
It
right,
is an
then I
agreement.
will move to approve this letter of intent for fiber build with eVergent dated February 7th.
I'll second that.
Other comments, questions, or discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. On to ordinances and resolution. Resolution 2024-03, resolution to vote to approve the second amended joint chapter 11 plan of reorganization of Indo International PLC and its affiliated debtors as recommended by the official committee of opioid claimants.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2024-03.
I'll second it.
Any questions or discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 1 under reports, municipal court from January 2024. Chief and I are going to be meeting with the judge, in 2 weeks? Not, yeah, or no, a week. March 1st, next Friday. Geez, March is next Friday. So, if there's something you need me to bring up, or Chief bring up, let me know. Item 2, administrator's report for suspiciously more than a quarter, September through December of 2023. I thought it would be a one-page report that said budget. I was really happy to see how smoothly the banking service transition went.
Yeah, it took us a little longer to transition than we originally targeted due to some issues that we had on our end with transitioning some things, but overall, everything's went well.
I have a question, of course. On the last page, I see that we have our population, we've hit 5,000 in the village. And if I'm not mistaken now, does that give us an increase in liquor licenses? I thought once we got to 5,000, then they would add,
I think what you're thinking is that for every 500 increase in population, you get another reserve license. And we do track that.
And this might be, for when you do your report, more for a question for you, but I was just on some of the airport transition to Doug, has that resulted in some, I guess, less burden for you, Lori?
From the standpoint that Doug's handling any visitations that people, when we had hangars open, we don't have those anymore, so that's good. And I know that he's handling a lot of the calls, but it went really well.
I'm hoping you only have to ask for stuff once.
Oh, yeah. No, he's really good. He's very responsive. No. And with the change in taking on the fuel sales, we've been working through the reports that we need. So from that standpoint, actually, there's a little more work because we're doing some documentation and the managing of the reporting and the finances. And we have some state reports we have to do every month, but Doug's very on top of getting me those readings that I need.
more so the way it should have always been done.
It was work that was always there. We just didn't know it. And I'm really glad that, I know we talk about it, but just for the board, all the work the staff's doing around using polymorphic, and I think probably more for Josh and Jason, but having that overnight parking process there, I think really helped you guys in getting the word out of when we had the big snow, please get your car off the street. Okay, yeah.
Because
Go ahead.
because we're over 5,000 people, are there any requirements or made to do? I'm trying to remember, how many people in the village before we need a police and fire commission?
That will be 5,000 people, but it's based on the next census with 5,000 people. So, yeah, so we have time before we have to do that.
So if I'm not mistaken, of my past times here, I remember from discussions, I think, I could be wrong, that once you hit 5,000, then you can go possibly to the state to ask if you can become a city.
We haven't put the logo up yet, so we could,
We have, yeah. Oh, God, let's not go there. All right. Any other questions or comments on Eileen's report? Very thorough report.
I think it's kind of a testament to this board if you look and see that this increase was the largest in a lot of years. And I think it's a result of the things you guys are doing, and obviously it's working.
Thank you. All right, item 3, Parks and Rec from November 13th. So I have a question, and maybe this has been addressed. I know I've traded emails about this, but like when we talk about trails, to the funding, our conversation earlier, that's all on the south side. That's all village property. That was never property in dispute as to who owned that.
Correct. However, there is a point where it's actually not even in the village anymore, it becomes township.
Well, that's a different issue. But
Yes.
that's, yeah, like if we wanted to take a trail all the way out to the town, we'd have to engage with the town.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. And did you all meet in December
No,
or January?
no, we didn't meet in January.
Oh, okay.
Did we? I don't think so.
All right, any other questions for John? All right, item 4, Airport Advisory Committee minutes from January. Questions for Jim? I like the new format. I like your new format on your minutes.
Thank you.
How is the ALP going?
We do now have sufficient amount of committee members for the advisory committee, and we haven't had any meetings since then, but I believe they'll be scheduling a meeting for April. That will be our next meeting.
And so we'll address things like the Highway 20 cut.
Yes.
So the overall impact or I don't want to say attitude, but things are looking up at the committees that meet at the airport, they're more positive?
I'll just jump on this first, Jim. Everything I'm seeing, if anybody airport-related, it seems to be a positive change, but I don't know what your comments are.
No, just to echo that. In fact, the last meeting, they were talking about the snow removal and described every member with the word wonderfully handled.
That was a hot topic prior as well.
That and then the grass cutting that's coming up.
Any other questions for Jim or Jason? Okay, item 5, draft plan commission minutes from February 12th, last week. Okay. I guess before we go to closed session, just as a reminder, I guess an announcement, we're not going to have a meeting on April the 1st because that's the Monday right before the election. It is not April Fool's. So we'll remind again in March, but just for people's calendars and schedules. All right, I will make a motion to adjourn to closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 1985 1E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, developer maintenance and reimbursement agreement.
I'll second that.
Roll call vote, please.
President Johnson?
Yes.
Trustee Alexander?
Yes.
Trustee Holm?
Yes.
Trustee Nugent? Yes. Trustee Renucci?
Yes.
Trustee Smalley?
Yes.
Thank you.